Hi team, so welcome to the Musculo skeletal health presentation, and when I say musculo skeletal health I'm talking about the soft tissues, so muscles, tendons, ligaments, which obviously all have an effect on the skeleton and joints as well. So as an introduction, fundamentally as a nation now we're not strong enough to do what we do. And the reason we're not strong enough to do what we do is because we tend to be very sedentary and we sit all day. So even as a police officer, you know the amounts of time that you're sitting in a car, at a desk, and fundamentally most of the nation now will sit at a desk or sit somewhere for either the majority or part of their day. So if you think back to our, depending on how old you are, grandparents, great-grandparents, great-great-great-grandparents, they were fundamentally active in everything they did. So they would have to walk several miles to the shops, they would carry heavy shopping back, they would have to wash floors by hand, they'd have to wash by hand. If they had a telly, they had to get up and actually press the buttons to turn the television station over. So every muscle in their body was being used. If you think about us now, like I've said, we already sit a lot, but we press a button, the telly changes channel. For some people, if they have Alexa will even close the curtains for them. I hate Alexa, so if you have got one, bin her, because she is fundamentally making us even more lazy. You know, if we can't close the curtains by ourselves, it really isn't helping our bodies and causes all sorts of illness. So we're not strong enough to do what we do. We need to make ourselves more robust. So this gives you an idea really of why muscles get tight, why they get weak, and things that we can do about it. And then onwards you'll see the videos progressing in order to assist you with that. So if I sit down, and you know what people look like when they're sitting down, hopefully, I would usually, if I was in a classroom with you, I would ask you to shout out names of muscles that you think might be tight on me or any person sitting. So if you think about yourselves at the end of the day, getting out of a chair, what's hurting, or what niggles may you or may you not have, or people that you know. So as you'll see, we've highlighted muscles that may be weak and may be tight, and it basically covers the whole body. So, and we're not wrong in thinking that. Now the interesting thing is that muscles can be tight and weak, or they can be tight and strong. And for the majority of us sitting, they tend to be tight and weak. So they feel tight, but they're quite weak, so functionally they don't work as efficiently as they should do. So although you shouldn't generalise with people because we're all very unique in our physiology and obviously the stuff that we do during the working day, there are a few muscles that I can guarantee will probably be tight and weak on people that sit. So we're going to go through those. So I'm going to mention first of all the glute muscles. So the buttock muscles, they should be the big powerhouse of the body. But unfortunately, because we sit on them all day, they tend to be less active and activated than they should be. So of course they activate to a certain extent, because if they didn't, you'd obviously fall over when you stepped out of your chair, and I'm assuming that most of you don't. But they're just not as efficient as they could be because we're sitting on them. And as a result of that, other muscles like the lower back will have to compensate, and therefore it leads to injury. So glutes are a big one that needs to be worked on for the majority of people. Your hamstrings, so the muscles at the top of the leg here. The hamstrings join at the sit bone, so right onto the buttock muscle. Now because we're sitting all day, we're basically shortening those hamstrings so they're in that flexed position all day, every day. And it's an exaggeration, but because they're shortening and they attach here, they're almost pulling you backwards, which is putting a lot of pressure through those lower discs of the spine. So hamstrings tend to be tight on a person sitting. Tight hamstrings, like I just mentioned, can lead to lower back pain. So if I was to see somebody in my clinic with lower back pain, I would be looking at their hamstring flexibility first and foremost, And if the hamstrings are tight, I would be giving them a rehab program, and part of that rehab program would be to lengthen those hamstrings. Another classic muscle that is tight on people that sit is your hip flexors and your quads. So you've got 4 quad muscles, obviously, hence the name quad, one of which crosses both the knee joint and the hip joint. So again, when we're sitting, this muscle is being squashed and shortened all day, every day. So again, if you imagine, and it's exaggeration again, it's pulling you forward. So it's tilting the pelvis forward, and that's the position you're in. So you've got your hamstrings potentially pulling you backwards, quads pulling you forwards, they're vying for this attention. Another classic area that tends to be tight on people that sit are the neck muscles and shoulder and back muscles, because we're hunched over all day in this position. The neck, well, the head weighs about 5 kilos, so the neck muscles are having to support that 5 kilos, particularly when we're protruding the head, which we tend to do. So it becomes very tight, can cause people a lot of pain, and if you've got tight neck muscles very often, they can cause tension headaches. So you may be getting headaches during your working day as well. There are obviously various reasons why you get headaches, but it is a causation by sitting there with your head protruded and the shoulder muscles and neck muscles having to support that weight. So we also become tight in the pectoral muscles, so the muscles across the chest. Again, for this reason, we're hunched forward, we're shortening those muscles, they become shorter and they pull us in. So we need to counteract that and open out. So pec muscles tend to be tight as well. So we'll stick with those 4 muscles for the time being that tend to be tight on most people, and it's something that you can bear in mind and work on. Another thing to mention here is that every part of the body is wrapped in a netting called fascia. So this netting surrounds all the muscles of the body and soft tissues. If you've ever heard of plantar fasciitis or you've had it, it's where the fascia on the bottom of the foot becomes really tight and inflamed, and it's very, very painful. So I'm just going to do a little demonstration with a golf ball now. We need to think of the body as a whole rather than isolated muscles, because by affecting one muscle and the fascia, it will have a knock-on effect potentially on other areas of the body. So the golf ball will just show you how that works. So you'll need, well, you can have a golf ball, tennis ball, any kind of sort of hard ball that will give a bit of pressure. You need a bare foot preferably, but I'll just take my shoe off for now and leave a sock. And you're going to roll that golf ball the length of your foot, the width of your foot, and cover as much surface area as you can. But before you do that, I want you to just test your hamstring length. So remember that you're not warm, but you're going to keep your knees straight, and you're going to reach down your shins as far as you can go before you feel those hamstrings start to stretch. So not through pain, but you're just feeling that stretch. And just make a mental note of where you get to. So a couple of inches above my ankles. Then you're going to roll the golf ball under the foot. So the whole length of the foot, you need to put as much pressure as you can through there. So length of the foot, width of the foot. This is actually a very good sort of rehab exercise if you have got plantar fasciitis, just to try and release that netting, the fascia on the bottom of the foot. Is a very painful condition. So you're going to roll for about 2 to 3 minutes with that golf ball, the whole length and width of the foot. I obviously won't do 2 to 3 minutes. You don't want to stand and watch me doing that for 2 to 3 minutes, just a demonstration. So that's one foot then over to the other, and you may notice that you're more sore on one side or the other. So whole length of the foot and width. And then when you've done that, what I want you to do is retest. So again, with those straight legs, straight knees, you're going to reach down and you're going to see how much further you go. Now, I only did 20 seconds-ish on each foot, and already I've got further. Now you could say that I've set that up, but I promise you every time I've done this with people, it works. Do it for yourself. And the reason is, like I've just said, we're thinking about the body as a whole. So by affecting the fascia on the bottom of the foot and releasing that netting, it has a knock-on effect up the posterior side of the body, so into the Achilles, into the calves, and into the hamstrings. So if you have got really tight hamstrings, which I can guarantee the majority of people have, You can affect your hamstring flexibility just by rolling a golf ball under your foot for 2 to 3 minutes each side. So if you do nothing else during your working day, 2 to 3 minutes on the golf ball will assist. Obviously it won't counteract the effects of sitting completely because you do a lot of that, but it will just help to make you a little bit more robust. So golf ball, great piece of kit. Now think about yourself, you know, have you had an injury or have you got a current injury? I would imagine you have at some point. Usually, again, if I'm live with people, there's very few people that don't put up their hands, say they've had some kind of injury. You know, and facts and figures wise, back pain and musculoskeletal problems are the biggest cause of absence in the UK. Certainly in police forces they are, coupled with stress. You know, if we're stressed, muscles get really, really tight, particularly in the shoulder, neck, back. So they do tend to go hand in hand as well. And they have a massive impact on your quality of life. For those that are, you know, keen on being outside or doing their sport or just anything, just being functional on a day-to-day basis, they can stop you in your tracks. And I speak from personal experience. I've had many an injury because of what I've done, sporting-wise and career-wise. And it is debilitating and it does mentally affect people, particularly if they're very active. So it's really worth paying attention to your body and trying to make yourself as resistant as you can. So causes of injury, obviously we've already mentioned sitting, poor posture. Now we could debate as to actually is there an ideal posture now, and there probably isn't. But if you're suffering any niggles or pain, there's certainly an improved posture. And we'll go through the various postures shortly. Obviously sitting at your desk for a prolonged period of time, but not only that, you then get in your car for a prolonged period of time. And you know, some people even drive to the gym to then sit on a static bike in the gym. So you know, some of us are sitting literally the whole day. Lifting or carrying objects, obviously if you're doing it wrongly, but also like I said, because we've become weak, because we are sedentary, we haven't got the strength necessary to lift objects. And that's when we're going to get injured. Muscle imbalances is a massive one for me. I've seen a lot of people in clinic that will come in and they are very unequal, let's say, on both sides of their body. So, you know, people will come in with one shoulder up towards their ear because they've been carrying heavy bags on that side, or that's the side they always carry their shopping on. So these muscles here become more developed or tight because we're in that constant position. And it's very, very noticeable to external people, but not necessarily to the person, because they've become so used to that and the body adapts. So if we're very much stronger on one side and I'm stronger on my right, again, it'll lead to injury because I can guarantee that my stronger side will be doing all the work when I'm lifting something. The other side is perhaps too weak to be able to cope with it. So muscle imbalances are a huge thing, and what I would say is if you have children, or even now as an adult, if you can be as ambidextrous as you can, it will go a long way in helping to correct those muscle imbalances. So if you're right-handed, you know, try lifting stuff with your left hand, albeit not heavy, you need to work up slowly. So that's a huge, huge thing. And it's those repetitive small movements that you do every day that can actually cause you know, a big injury. So using a mouse all day at a computer, tiny little things that you may think don't make a difference, but they really can do, and they can cause chronic injuries. What I will say as well about injuries is a lot of people will say to me, well, I was playing football and that's, you know, when my hamstring went. And absolutely, sport is the catalyst a lot of the time for injuries, but the causation is the years and months of being sedentary. And like I say, muscles switching off, not having that range of motion. You know, if you sit all day at your desk and the hamstrings are getting shorter, and then you're playing football, you're then saying to the hamstrings, I want you to stretch, I want you to have this range of motion. And of course they haven't got it, so they tear. So it's the sitting and the sedentary and things that you do in everyday life that potentially are the cause. Your sport or something that you're doing that involves you to be more mobile and have that range of motion is the catalyst. The sport you do or the hobbies that you do and comparing them to being sedentary, and how that's going to work for you with muscles and tightness, etc. So there are sort of 4 postures or way people stand, let's call it, that you'll probably see. Well, the first one, I say you probably see, the first one you probably won't see much, is ideal alignment. So in ideal alignment, your ear would line up with your shoulder would line up with your hip, and your hip would line up with the ankle bone. I challenge you to go and find people, it's a great game you can play in Tesco's or wherever you go shopping, spot the person with the ideal posture, because I'm yet to find anybody. Also, the spine should have its natural curves, and that's to shock absorb. So again, somebody with ideal alignment, with all those parts of the body lined up and their natural curves, yeah, good luck spotting one. Now the second posture, which you'll see a lot, is this kyphosis, so the rounding of the thoracic spine up at the top of the spine, because we're sitting like this all day, neck's protruding, poor little neck muscles having to work really hard, we've shortened our pec muscles, and we're all bent over and hunched. And we're seeing younger and younger people like that, because obviously now we've got tech to necks, haven't we, and people playing on social media all the time. So I've seen young children now coming in to see me for treatment, and they've already got that kyphosis happening. It's not a great place to be. Added to that, you get the lordosis, so you get an exaggerated lumbar curve. So it curves inwards, and again that can cause awful pressure on the discs, particularly the lower discs. Again, can be caused by tight hamstrings and sitting. So we've got that horrible kyphosis curve, and then we've got this lumbar curve. Not a good position to be in. You'll also see some people with a sway back posture. So you'll see their hips swaying back past their knees. Again, can be caused by tight hamstring and things that they're doing during their working day. And then you'll see some people that have no curves to the spine at all, and those curves have been flattened. So there is kind of a general, putting people into compartments as to what you'll see, but it's really worth looking at yourselves in the mirror. So people will look at themselves for vanity or cleaning their teeth in the morning, but actually really important is just to take note of your posture. Are you standing with one shoulder higher than the other? Is your pelvis twisted? Is there one side of your neck that's hurting more than the other? So it's really worth paying attention to what's going on in your body, and then trying to work out how we can rectify that. So tips at work. With your desk, you may or may not have your own desk, but we need to sit up straight. So we tend to start, especially when you get tired, start slumping. So nice straight back. Now it's hard work, because if your body is used to doing that, it's then really hard to say, no, you need to work. So later on through the videos with mobility and the Desk to Durable program that I do, you'll be given some ideas as to what you can do to strengthen those back muscles and counteract this horrible hunched effect. Your knees should be level with your hips, ideally, when you're sitting on your chair, and your feet should be flat on the floor. So a lot of people tend to cross their legs, or they cross one leg over the other, and this goes to sitting on a sofa in an evening. Now if we're doing that, I've already mentioned that the hip flexors, the muscles that cross the hip, become really squashed. So if we're doing this with one leg over the other, you're squashing this side a bit more, and you're almost getting this twisted pelvis. So sometimes people can think they've got this twisted pelvis, but actually it's where this hip flexor is tight. And if we release it, stretch it with flexibility, mobility, again, you can help to correct that muscle imbalance. The monitor should be arm's length from your eyes, so not too close to you and not obviously stretched out too much. And your elbow should be vertically under your shoulders. Most importantly is to get up and move around, ideally every 15 to 20 minutes, which we just don't do. Some people are sitting there for 9-10 hours a day. So if you can set yourself a little reminder, even just standing up for 5 seconds and sitting back down is going to do you a lot of good, because you're basically stretching these muscles out that are getting squashed all day. And we do lose a certain amount of height during the working day as well, because you're squashing those spinal discs together. But if you get up during your working day, you're stretching them out and you're counteracting the effects of sitting all day long. So just getting up, moving is going to really, really help. So mobility and stretching, you'll see those in the next couple of videos. They will be videos only about 10 minutes long that you can fit into your working day, that you can do as often as possible. So flexibility is the ability of a muscle to stretch temporarily when needed, which we tend to lose when we're sitting, and then when we go and be mobile, they struggle to have that flexibility. And mobility is the ability of a joint to move through its intended range of motion. Again, they go hand in hand, and we start to limit our mobility, particularly as we get older. And mobility and stretching is probably the part of training that gets neglected the most, and actually is the most important. If you're not mobile and you're not flexible, you will never reach your full potential with any sport or just functional movement on a day-to-day basis. Just quickly to mention here as well, strength and conditioning. Like I say, we're not strong enough to do what we do. By incorporating strength into your training program, we can reduce injuries by 50%. It improves running economy, and I say running economy because police officers obviously have to do a fitness test that involves running, but it will improve the economy of every sport you do. Like I've said before, we're not strong enough to do what we do now as a nation, and we need to strengthen the soft tissues. The stronger your soft tissues are, the more they'll support the joints. You will also notice as we go through that I will tend to do a lot of single arm and single leg exercise. The reason being, as I've mentioned, that muscle imbalance is a big cause of injury, and we become so dominant on one side. So by doing single arm and single leg stuff, we know that we're working both sides equally. And most importantly, and again we'll cover this in videos to come, you need to think about the way you move. So by thinking about the way you move, moving correctly, you're going to be activating muscles that need to be activated, and therefore making yourself robust. So I hope you found this interesting. It's the basis of just understanding your body, thinking about your body, thinking about what particular injuries you've got, and how you can keep yourself more robust for functional day-to-day activity, but also if you're into your sport, about how to reach your full potential. I will see you in the next videos. Okay, so we're going to look at some